Welcome to Book of Recaps. Today, we'll be going through the 2017 action thriller film John Wick Chapter 2. Let's get started, and spoilers ahead. The movie starts with John Wick involved in a chase to recover his stolen Ford Mustang from Abram Tarasov, the brother of the late Viggo. Tarasov, on the other hand, immediately alerts his men to be ready to face John. One of his henchmen, who seems too confident in himself, belittles John and says that he can handle him single-handedly. He asks Abram if they are giving up everything for a car. Then Tarasov tells him that it's not just a car, it's John Wick's car. He then suggests to his boss to just give John the car. The boss then describes what kind of man they're actually dealing with right now, saying John Wick killed his nephew, his brother, and dozens of his men over his car and a puppy. The henchman then suggests they eliminate John. Tarasov makes it abundantly clear that they're talking about John Wick, and the word ordinary is not for that man. He tells his men that John is highly respected in the crime world due to his tenacity and prowess. John, on the other hand, finds out the whereabouts of his Ford Mustang and rushes to Tarasov's place. He paralyzes all of Tarasov's men in a violent rampage and ends up damaging his favorite car. John, however, spares Tarasov's life, as he promises not to interfere with John's life ever again. John accepts the peace treaty, and that reminds him of his old life as a hitman. He intends to return to life as an ordinary man who is a widower after the death of his wife. After a few days, Aurelio comes to his house being asked to repair his Ford Mustang. He inspects the car and says that it's going to take a while to repair this thing. In the evening, John is visited by Camorra crime boss Santino D'Antonio. He asks John to return to his old life and offers him a job as well. Santino reminds John that he was the one who helped John complete his impossible task, which allowed John to retire and marry Helen. In return, John swore to a marker, an unbreakable vow symbolized by a blood oath medallion. Santino presents the marker to demand services from John, and immediately declines the offer. The rejection does not sit well with Santino, and he launches an attack to destroy John's house with a grenade launcher. John somehow manages to survive the attack. Having no place to live, John goes to Continental Hotel in New York City with his dog. John then seeks help and advice from Winston, who reminds him that if he rejects the marker, he will be in violation of two unbreakable rules of the underworld: no killing on Continental grounds and honoring every marker. John realizes that he has no other choice, so he reluctantly gives in to his commitment and goes to see Santino. Santino wastes no time and talks business right away. He asks John to kill his sister Gianna. Santino is jealous of his sister because she is to be at the high table, as Santino's father considers her more worthy of taking the position after her father than Santino. Santino wants her dead, as he wants to claim a seat at the high table. Joan agrees to the mission, and Santino appoints his bodyguard Eris to keep an eye on John and observe how he goes about the mission. Joan goes to the storage location, picks up some of his belongings, and goes to Rome. He stays at the Rome branch of the Continental Hotel and is warmly greeted by Jules, who is a manager at the hotel. John then goes to visit a tailor shop that is devoted to assassins. They design bulletproof clothing to support the work in the criminal underworld. Now, John needs to know the whereabouts of Gianna, so he goes to visit a man to get a blueprint of her whereabouts to make it easier for himself to figure out the various accesses in and out of the place where she is. Joan needs some weapons, so he goes to a regular weapon shop. It turns out that the shopkeeper is very much familiar with the legend John Wick and knows what kind of weapons are suitable for him to carry out his mission. At night, Joan infiltrates Gianna's coronation for her seat at the high table and confronts her in a dressing room. Faced with certain death, Gianna chooses to take her own life by slitting her wrists. As Gianna dies, John shoots her in the head to fulfill the marker. Joan completes his mission and is leaving the place when Gianna's bodyguard named Cassian sees Joan and immediately recognizes him. He figures out that Joan has been sent there to kill Gianna. Cassian immediately attacks him and they engage in a shootout. John is able to get away from Cassian and his henchmen, then flees to the catacombs, where he gets double-crossed by Ares, the woman Santino appointed to keep an eye on John. She, along with his henchmen, intend to tie up loose ends by killing John. After killing most of the henchmen, John is again pursued by Cassian. He again gets involved in a fierce shootout with Cassian and his men, bringing them to the lobby area of the Continental Hotel, which, like the New York Continental, prohibits conducting any business on his grounds. John and Cassian stop fighting to respect the rules of the hotels. The two then go to the bar and share a drink. This is when John tells Cassian the reason behind him assassinating Gianna. Despite knowing that Santino is the one behind the death of Gianna, Cassian still says that he's going to kill John. However, he promises John to give him a quick death as professional respect. When John gets to his room, he receives a call from Santino. He tells John that he understands if John is upset, and says that he is aware that what he just did to him might feel personal. Santino then goes on to say what kind of man he would be if he didn't avenge his sister. This is when John hangs up the phone out of anger. The next day, John prepares to check out of Rome's Continental Hotel and make his way back to New York City. Santino, on the other hand, opens a $7 million contract to kill John Wick under the guise of avenging his sister. The contract is distributed to all the high-profile assassins around the world. Winston then goes on to warn Santino that he's made a big mistake. He has betrayed John, and he is not the right man to mess with. Winston tells Santino that he has stabbed the devil in the back and forced him into the life he had just left. He tells him that John is now free of the marker, and he will come back to get revenge for messing with him. Santino is repeatedly warned and told that he is now going to face the consequences of screwing up John Wick. John, on the other hand, arrives in New York City. He receives a warm welcome with bullets from the assassins trying to claim $7 million. The man finds himself constantly under attack as he walks the streets of New York. John himself is a high-profile assassin, so trying to kill him does not turn out to be a walk in the park for the other assassins as well. He faces some trouble dealing with a fat assassin, but manages to shoot him in the head. He continues walking in the subway where he is confronted by Cassian. They once again engage in a gun battle with silencers in the crowd to prevent causing chaos. The two then get into a physical fight. After engaging in a vicious fight, John manages to stab Cassian in the aorta with a knife, leaving his fate uncertain. John himself gets seriously injured and finds himself in need of help. He sees a beggar and seeks help from him, giving him a coin of gold. The beggar helps him out, and he is able to carry himself out of there. John still needs help, so he goes on to meet an underground crime boss who is known as the Bowery King. The Bowery King's man treats John's injuries. John then asks the Bowery King to help him find the location of Santino. He asks him to use his underground network to find out the whereabouts of Santino, and further demands his weapons as well. Now, the Bowery King asks John why he should be helping him out in the first place. John makes a valid point by saying that if Santino manages to get a seat at the high table, then the Bowery King will be removed from office and he will lose his resources. John tells him that if this happens, Bowery King will no longer be able to control his underground networks. This is when the Bowery King realizes that John has put forward valid points. He starts thinking on it. The Bowery King is intrigued by John's intent to kill a member of the high table. The Bowery King decides to help him out and gives him a gun with only 7 bullets, 1 for each million of the contracts, and directs John to an art museum where Santino holds a gala. John is now in a tight situation. John directly goes to the museum and starts slaughtering Santino's men. John chases Santino throughout the museum where he kills his remaining henchmen. However, Santino gets lucky as his mute security enforcer Eris gets there, and Santino manages to escape from there. John makes quick work of the other henchmen of Santino, killing all of them. The two engage in a vicious fight, and John finally ends up killing the woman. While these two are fighting, Santino manages to escape to the Continental, where he intends to remain in a shelter. If you guys remember, there is a rule that no killing can take place inside the Continental. Santino is sure that he's going to be safe inside the Continental, and John is not going to get there and kill him as long as he remains there. John finally arrives at the Continental after a while and asks Sharon where Santino is. John has been through a lot in the last few days. He's covered in blood and wounds, but he still appears to be firm, and he is committed to getting things done the way he now wants. Sharon does not want to be on the other end of John's wrath, so he tells him where Santino is. Santino is at the Continental lounge with Winston. John goes there. Upon seeing John heading towards them, Winston warns John not to act rashly by killing Santino and the Continental consequences. On the other hand, Santino seems really relaxed, so at this point, John says enough is enough, and without thinking, he completely ignores the warnings of there. At once, he goes to his old house and reminisces about the time he spent with his late wife during their stay in the house. He recalls many beautiful memories and the beautiful time he spent there with his loving wife. The next day, Sharon comes to John and takes him to a park to meet Winston. Since John has broken the rules of the Continental, the time to face the consequences has come. Winston tells him that according to the high table, the value of the contract to kill John has been doubled and offered globally. As further consequence of killing Santino on Continental grounds, Winston declares John excommunicado, terminating all his access and privileges to underworld resources. John tells him that everyone around them right now is an assassin who are ready to kill John. However, Winston delays in announcing John's excommunication by 1 hour to give him a head start and provides him with a marker for future use. John then goes ahead to tell Winston to tell them all, whoever comes, whoever it is, he will kill them. He will kill them all, to which Winston says, of course you will. After that, John leaves with his dog. Winston makes a call enacting John's excommunicado to be activated in 1 hour. As the contract is activated and cellular phones begin to ring all around him, John begins to run. The movie ends. The moo. Hit like, subscribe, and do comment for more movie recaps.